Hey everybody, welcome back to the Voices of Valhalla. As always, I'm your host Skylar Race with my co-host Derek Ramos. Today we have our guest Harris. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself and all that good stuff. So, how's everybody's week been? Give me the lowdown. What's going on with everybody?
Harris, go first. Give
All
us the
right,
tea.
man. I know. I feel like this week was pretty. I've been having this weird thing. I'm like transitioning more into office life. I've been in the field a lot recently. I'm an archaeologist, so now that I'm going back into the office to like do other parts of my job, and I apologize because my dog is here. That I feel like I'm trying to resync everything I know about being a young professional. Like I used to being in the field was great. It's just like being in the field in the military. It's kind of like what happens in the field stays in the field. You're just doing your job. You're following regulations, but it's pretty practical. When you go to the office, you start typing emails again, and then you're like, you're trying to be you cross your T's and dot your I's. You're trying to say good morning, and you're trying to be like really professional. But you're in the field. You're like, man, let's just get this done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. My week has been a big transition week. What about you guys?
Not too bad.
Yeah, pretty relaxed week. Parents came in town to visit. Changed the floors in the house. Actually, ripped up carpets, put down some linoleum.
Linoleum? What the hell is that?
It's like so. It's like fake hardwoods, okay?
Okay.
It's,
We got linoleum downstairs.
dude, I love it. It makes my room probably 10 degrees colder. And when I go to sleep, that's fucking love it.
Cold room. Yep. Got to sleep
hell
in the
yeah.
cold room.
Besides that, man, pretty relaxed week. Didn't do much besides work and fucking weather's been weird. It was 40 one day and then 80 the next.
Oh,
What
wow.
about you,
The
Derek?
Texas
Anything
weather.
going on up there?
Pretty slow. Spring break starts on Monday, so the week
You know,
before
Derek's
spring
going
break
down
is
to
trying to
Fort
just getting through
Lauderdale.
classes, just like, oh man, living the dream and whatnot.
Yeah, Derek's
Um,
getting ready with all his frat friends to go out to Florida for spring
Time to
break.
start partying. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have a question for you, Harris.
What up?
It's interesting that you brought up that you're transitioning back into office life, right? Um, Harris and I actually went to the same undergraduate college, Syracuse University. That's where we met, and we spent a lot of time together there. So that is kind of a transition, I would say, from field life into more of like a civilian life, right? But now after college, you transition into this like new job, archaeology, and go into the field and stuff. So you're kind of going back and forth, back and forth.
Right.
What is that transition like, and what effects has it had on you?
It's a good question. Honestly, I feel like you guys both, being in a combat arms job, right? See, when I was in the military, I was an intelligence specialist, so wasn't really in combat arms. I was in the field all the time with you guys, but I wasn't doing the same. Like, you guys were hooking and jabbing. You guys were, planning movements and like really practicing this. It's almost like practicing combat, like you're
Mhm.
really trying to practice what you're going to perform when the day comes. Anyway, with this, I had, a lot of professional FaceTime with like officers, things that like you're delivering sensitive information. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Like I do these projects and stuff, and I acquire sensitive information, whether it's artifacts or things about a site, and I have to present it to a government official or whoever the client is. So I feel like the transition going back, it feels like I'm almost in a military setting again. You do have like a chain of command. You have your field investigators, you have your senior archaeologist, and that is who you talk to. I think the military really set me up for success in how to operate in like an outdoor environment, if you
Yeah.
will.
Mhm.
But like you said earlier, I mean, we went to university together, and that transition was way bigger from going from the military where, and I'm going to say, like, whatever I say are my own views.
Okay.
This
Yeah.
is not the views of the Marine Corps, but I really feel like anyone can be in the military if you're willing to follow orders.
Yeah.
They tell you where to be, like what you're wearing, down to exactly how to wear it. You don't really have to think. And I
If you think
in
about it,
college,
honestly, it's kind of an
yeah,
easy life. Yeah, you have everything
very.
planned out for you. All you have to do is show up on time and follow orders, like you said.
Amen. But I think the part with that is that the stressful part is that you're told so many things that if you do something wrong, it's just like that's 100% your fault.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
you were explicitly told to act this way, wear this thing, and so if you're messing up, you're gonna hear it.
And when
and
you're
it
doing
sucks.
like really good, you're put in charge of the people that aren't doing really good.
You're like, man,
So then you got to
how
take
hard
care
is
of
it
yourself
to-
and you got to take care of others.
I think about like socks, right? Like it comes down to like you're wearing desert socks. Like that's what they tell you to wear. No black socks, no Nike. But you see guys like rocking the Nike socks or whatever.
We had
And
that at Tanks a lot.
so, and like, I'm not gonna lie, I was wearing the Nike socks, but the one day we had a surprise investigation, I'm rocking the Nike, and man, it was no one's fault but my own.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
like I literally did something I wasn't supposed to. And I think the problem is now, and maybe it's taught me how to be more accountable, but it's 100% my fault. Some other guys out there will tell you, man, these regulations are BS and all that stuff. Like, bro, you chose to wear the Nike socks. Like, you knew, like, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with wearing it until you get caught. So I don't
Right.
know. But that's my
No,
take.
that's exactly how it is. Me and Derek were talking about, I think, like episode 2. Like, a perfect example for us is like everything we do wrong. It's always like when we're in the Corps. Everything we would do wrong, it's like somebody's going to die if you do this wrong. Somebody's going to die. So I was
true.
thinking, I work on tractor trailers now, and my boss came up to me and he's like, "Do you know what happens if you don't change that light right?" And I'm like, "People are going to die." He's like, "No, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah, I hear that, man. And like, so but you're working in a job that's, I mean, there is a risk there. You have professional hazards, right? Like things go wrong. I don't know. Do you have like OSHA on site and stuff if you're inspecting like heavy machinery?
Not on site.
No.
We've got our regulations that we have to keep up with. I actually travel around. I'm a mobile tech, so
Okay.
I go to a bunch of different places that just have a shit ton of tractor trailers. So
That's
I'm pretty
intense,
much
man.
by myself. So.
Yeah. That's
Well,
intense.
so we were all at Tanks at one point in our career, right? So I remember this one thing, and this is like the hazards that people never talk about. I remember, I couldn't tell you who it was, but it was someone in S3. They were filling up at the gas station, or not the gas station, but the one on base, the refuel depot.
Mhm.
And someone was handing them the nozzle for the gasoline, and they dropped it. It was like a master sergeant. It was, I don't know, top sig or something. And he dropped it and it hit the kid in the head, and he wasn't wearing his hard hat, and he cut his head open.
Oh God.
And
God, that would hurt.
to us,
I've
we're
never
like,
worn a
"Oh."
hard hat doing that.
Well, you're supposed to. You're literally you're supposed to be wearing hard hats when you do, or when you're
Yeah.
doing certain things.
Mhm.
And the fact that it cut his head and he wasn't wearing his hard hat, I'm like, dude,
That's
course-
the military for you.
it's
Yeah.
a military thing. I'm sure tractor trailers are totally different, but like I'm sure you're wearing some sort of professional hazard
Yeah.
prevention gear.
In Tanks, we
Supposed
tend to cut some corners a little bit, and then in the act, some people get hurt, and then higher ups know it, and they kind of be like, hey, just get over it, you'll be fine.
Dude.
But in reality, they're the ones that kind of told us to cut the corners. So
Yeah, man, like it's the stress. They're telling us to get this done on time, and I'm trying to get it done on time, but I don't want to. If we do it the right way, it's going to take a lot longer.
yeah,
I relate it to having like a little brother that you accidentally hurt, and you're like, "Hey, calm down before mom comes."
You can hit me back. You can hit me back. I swear to God.
Exactly. Just don't tell mom. Don't tell mom.
That's exactly how it is.
So Harris, tell us a little bit of what the field life in archaeology entails. Like, what is it like working with other archaeologists, and how does that compare with working with Marines in any setting in general? Because Marines are Marines no matter where they are.
I honestly being a veteran now, and it's so funny when you interact with people. I live in the South, and there's a massive pool of vets that live in the South. There's a lot of vets that live everywhere, but particularly the South. I live in South Carolina. And when you interact with people and you tell them that you're a Marine, they either think two things. They're like, wow, extremely honorable. Like, that's a U.S. Marine right there. Or for people who know Marines, they're like, and this guy could be an idiot. You don't know. Do we trust this guy? And so you don't know how they're thinking of you. And so my goal is when, oh, he came from the military. People say, what branch? And I'm like, Marine Corps. I can immediately tell by the way that they start interacting with me on which person I think I am.
Yep.
And my goal is to try to bring that honor. Like, I can't promise I always bring it, but like I've definitely had my bonehead moments. Anyway, when you work with people who are just graduating college, that's a lot of people who are in anthropology and archaeology in general. And that's a big thing with the Marine Corps too. You're 18 years old. It's your really first professional job.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say a lot of it is trying not to insult your peers' intelligence, but also like taking pride in your work, like trying to show you like that you're here for a job, and like it's that things that the Marine Corps instills in you, like do what you do and be the best that you can be at it. Like know yourself, seek self improvement. I hate being this guy, but then like also know your peers and employ them to what their strengths are. I feel like that's really what it is. Going in the field for archaeology is a lot different because it's not so much like in the Marine Corps, you have movements. You got to be accountable. How many times had you had to count in a platoon, and then someone can't count to 70, so then you started like you're not doing that in archaeology. You're up early in the morning. You're trying to be accountable with your shovels and your gear. Like, what do we have? This is, and ironically, my field dig kit, everyone's is an ammo can. So I, not even kidding, every single person at my firm
just walking around an ammo can.
But mine's a 50 caliber. Other guys
the wrong
like
people out there.
No, I got like a trowel in there and shit. I would slap that thing open. I'll start doing ammo anyway. But it's a lot of just taking accountability in your work and keeping your peers accountable. Like you ultimately have a product that you want to deliver to someone, which is a report or some artifacts. So you want to make sure that you did everything right, so nothing gets kicked back. It's
absolutely. I think you said it really well. Like in the Marines, like they make it to where you're going to do what you fit best, and I feel like in the civilian side, they try to mold you to do a job a certain way.
Absolutely,
and it a lot of times does work because I look at a dude and I'll be like, "You should be mopping the floor." Not fucking changing tires. Like,
dude, like we had these brooms in our field office, right? The field office is just like a nice warehouse, and not even kidding. I was watching one of your guys' episodes, and you guys were talking about how you guys used to sweep the ramp.
Yeah,
and literally like, and to me, as an intel guy, I never had to sweep the ramp. Not once. I would be nice. Like, when things got hard for me, I'm like, oh, there's some intel stuff I gotta go take care of.
Gotta go home at 3:30.
And dude, now I see like a thin layer of dust at the field office, and I see a broom, and I'm like, let's get sweeping, team. Like, and it's not, it's not gonna stop the truck from working or anything.
If I see a broom, I start shivering. I get cold.
Yeah, like I get the hot sweats. But that's exactly what happened. At first, you don't know why you do it, and they tell you, oh, it's to preventative maintenance. They could tell you anything, and you still have to sweep. Now that I see it, though, I see a broom and I see a light film of dust on the farm. Like, there's some private first class out there who should be getting some easy work today.
Now, I have this interesting question for you, Harris. You said like working in your environment right now, it's kind of similar to working in the Marine Corps in a sense, right? That you have structure. Do you think vets should be looking for jobs that have this sort of structure in them? That way, it would be easier for them to transition. Is this something that vets could look for?
I like that question, but I'm going to say no, because every vet is different. How many times that you guys have, like, when you tell someone you're a veteran, you live in Texas, like that is, you run into a lot of Marines, and I would say the majority could be type A. Like, the Marine Corps is a very proud group of people. So though that not every Marine is the same, the loudest usually get the most attention, and people be like, wow, that's what Marines are. Yeah. Not every Marine is going to be some hard charger, and like, if you really like, there's a lot of jobs in the Marine Corps that I'm sure that people don't want to, or get out in the private side.
Do the same thing.
They want to really hone their professional crafts. Or how many times did you know someone who was really good at one thing in the Marine Corps, and then they get out and they do something like, oh, I make rugs now. And you're like, wow, that's not what I thought you'd be doing. Like, I think that if you're looking for structure, and I think that's a lot of things that certain, veterans do struggle with, is having that same amount of structure. I think if you need that, there are a billion jobs out there for you that will love to have you. And they would employ you in a leadership level because you have the tools. Also, if you don't feel like that's the job for you, there are a lot of jobs that are almost autonomous that will let you operate in your own capacity. I think with me, I have really found this happy medium where I have really good structure. I know probably what my week is going to look like, and I know how to operate that week. But there's enough new things where, like, not every site is the same. Not every artifact's the same. So I can do the same things on a different site and really have two totally different results.
Yeah, some variability within your work. Yeah, but maintaining the same structure.
Dang,
You know,
okay.
and like you two are young, you know, like okay, so Derek, good point for you is that you're in college. There are a
Mhm.
lot of vets that just don't even pursue college. That they have, you know, they have. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You have a GI Bill, and they just know that it's not for them. Like
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
never force a veteran to go to college, even though I think that you know these benefits, whether it's vocational rehab that pay for it could be like a trade school that's not quite college. There are
Mhm.
other ways to go around it. You
Yeah.
know, like
Mhm.
it's just a matter of who the veteran is, and I think it's
It
hard
is,
for
yeah, for
veterans
sure.
to identify themselves.
I've noticed for sure, like the vets in college definitely have a different, a different vibe to them as opposed to like a veteran that you would run into like in a work setting
Sure.
or like out in the street for sure.
Like
So
me.
it's
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, what did you say? Like
I
you?
was gonna say, like me, dude. I couldn't sit at a desk. I couldn't sit at a lecture. I'd throw my
Yeah,
damn laptop
and
at the
some people just
There you
can't do
go,
it.
man.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, for
And
sure.
before I started transferring to office life, I was telling my girlfriend this because she has a work from home job, but I meant like I used to think before I witnessed her work from home job, I used to be like, oh, work from home, you know, whatever. This girl's on calls, she's doing emails, she's getting like brought into these meetings all day, and I think that is genuinely exhausting. That's something that I don't like want to pursue.
And you're not leaving the home
And you're not
too.
leaving
It's
the
kind of
home, you
like a
know,
weird
like,
thing to it. Yeah, if you think about it.
and I think that's a hard thing. But I used to think that like you know, I thought it was the same thing with college. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was like, oh, these college students, a final, bro? Like, what the fuck ever, man. These kids are whining over nothing. And then I went to college. And then I was like, man, these finals are stressing me out. It's a different
Yeah.
type of stress. It's not the stress of like
Yeah.
someone's going to die, but it's a stress that like you literally have to apply yourself. And
Mhm.
that's the way I look at working now. Like, there are people who I really firmly believe anyone can dig a shovel test in archaeology. You dig a circle, you go down 70 centimeters to a meter, you
Yep.
find some, or you don't.
Yep.
It's hard to send an email though. You can't. It's hard to sit at your desk and like really make sure that your email sounds good. And I think that is something that I don't want to do. I don't want to send emails, but I think it's very hard to do.
That's an
So,
interesting thing that you brought up because I had this experience not too long ago where somebody needed to write an email and they're a new college student and they didn't know how to write the email. It's kind of like, wait a second, what do you mean you don't know how to write an email? But
yeah,
I've written thousands of emails. In how long have I been in school now? 6 years. I've probably written tens of thousands of emails actually. It's just secondhand to me, but it's not, something that's natural to everybody, which is
exactly.
something I didn't think about before, but now it's something that's on my mind for sure.
Yep.
And then I think
Absolutely.
for you, Skylar, too, is like, do you ever get like an 18-year-old like, you know, they're not going to college and they just really want to start a trade or they want a job that is going to. Do you have 18-year-olds that you work with?
The youngest guy we got, I think, is 20, but he's still
That's
That's
young,
that's
yeah.
young.
man.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm guessing that this is one of his first jobs out of
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah. Out of
Can
high
you
school, I think
tell?
it is his first job.
Like, when you tell him to do something, like, can you tell?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you can
See?
tell. So I will say he's very good about it. Compared to guys in the Marine Corps,
Oh, yeah.
like lieutenants, straight out of college, man, they'll come on the tank thinking they know everything, and I'm like, dude, just listen.
That's what
But
they taught me, man.
this kid, he does really well. But you can see the kind of not arrogance, but I'd call it confidence in him. He
Sure.
knows. He's like, I
Young
got
buck.
this shit. I know what I'm doing. And I'm like, all right, good kid, good for
There's
you.
always one that wants to show up and prove his worth
I love
immediately.
that.
Yeah, we
Yep.
had that in tanks a lot too. When we had new people coming in from tank school, like new graduates, they
Oh
join
yeah.
the fleet immediately and they just want to apply themselves and prove that they're the top dog.
Yep. And
Unfortunately,
you
most
got
times
that.
it failed, but
Yeah, you know, it's
hey, it
very
was cool to
seldom
see.
that the
Like,
top
hey,
dog
bud,
was the
you're
top
doing
dog.
great. Give him a slap on the back and tell him to sleep for another 3 hours.
Right.
Watch that morale go down the drain real quick.
Oh yeah. Oh
Dude.
yeah. It's good
But
stuff.
there's this one thing that I was taught too, and I learned this from a guy. So we contracted before we started getting drones in house for our firm. We had a guy who did our drone stuff for him, and he had this really nice drone, and he was a Army Reserve veteran,
Mhm.
reserve, but he was still a veteran, and he could kind of understand it. And he broke this down for me because I was having trouble articulating to him, and he was like, you're a new veteran. This was a year ago or so. And I was like, yeah, I kind of knew. And he goes like, you're going to figure out that the professional sphere is just not the same. And I was like, yeah, I'm just trying to like navigate that right now. And he goes like, I was told this. And someone asked him to grab them a pen once, and he literally grabbed them a pen right away and gave it to him. And he goes, and the person goes, now watch this. Let me ask someone who's not a veteran to grab a pen. He goes, can you give me the pen? And they're like, yeah, I'll get it to you in like 30-ish minutes or whatever. And he framed it. He's like, I never thought of it like that. And he goes like, well, you asked me for something, and a pen sounds like something very dire. Like you need something to write with, right? You know, it's like, I'm just going through why you would need a pen in my head, and I got it to you right away. He's like, that is what it is to be a veteran. Like really trying to, like, it was like if first sergeant asked me to do something, it's probably the first thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like very true. And even if my peer is not a first sergeant, if they ask me to do something, I'm going to take what they say very seriously because it's going to help me complete the overall group mission.
Mm-hmm.
Other people do not see that. A lot of people operate independently, and
Yeah.
I see that more than ever now. That like was like
They kind of
an
see it as a
eye-opening
bother,
thing.
right? Like, why are you asking me for a pen? Why don't you go grab the pen? Or something
Exactly.
like that.
And I'm like, oh, like a pen is a pen is a pen. Bro, I'll get you that.
A pen is
first.
a pen is a pen.
Bro, I'm just trying to.
Right, that's the easiest
We're on the
thing
same
to do
team.
today.
So
Yep.
I don't know if you see that too, Skylar, being in a job where when someone asks you to do something, I will do it probably right away professionally.
Yep. Like like yesterday, I had a trailer I had to go do, and I got the email at like 10 a.m. And then it was like, by the end of the day, knock this out. Dude, that was the only thing on my mind for the rest of the day. I was like, I got to go do that trailer like now.
Yeah, man.
Mhm.
I hear that. Yeah.
I totally get it. It's a totally different mindset. And then when I was training, I was working with a guy that wasn't a vet, and he would get like an email like that, and he'd be like, if we get to it, we get to it. And I'm sitting there panicking, like, dude, if we don't get there, the trailer's not going to work. Like, they're just not going to
It's
be
my
able to move.
ass.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
I hear.
This is a very
I'm not
interesting
field
topic
daying
too.
on
Yeah.
Friday because you don't want to go to a trailer, dude. Come on, we got to go.
Dude, I hear. Yeah, man.
In
It's
in
just
a completely different setting. Sorry to cut you off, Harris,
oh,
but
you're good.
I have that like this mentality of doing things right away, right? It applies a little bit different in academia, which is my setting, right? So if I get an email to do something, my initial thought, like, you know, both of you have, is do it right away, try to get it done as fast as possible. In academia, sometimes like I'll get an email, I'll reply back immediately, and then I won't get a reply for like a week or two. And it's kind of like this weird thing is like, why are you asking me to do something? I do it right away. And now I'm kind of, you know, playing with my thumbs here, waiting for a response. And it's just something I've had to adapt to. And now I would say now I'm a little bit more adapt to, where I'm not rushing to reply to emails. I'm not rushing to do tasks, because in this setting that I'm in, a lot of things could be done over time and not have to be done immediately without any repercussion. So that's something I definitely had to adjust to, and I learned decently quick, but it's something that I didn't know I had instilled in me because of the military.
And like being in the military, like and it's the way I look at going on leave too. Like you go on leave, and like I think there is this, you know, and maybe you guys don't feel this way, but when you're in the fleet, there is this like feeling of just existential dread around you. Everyone is miserable. Misery loves company, but you're all doing it together, and you know it's going to get, like, the job is going to get done. When you go home, you're not surrounded by Marines. It's a very different pace. You know, whether it's vacation, you're on vacation, you're taking things slower, but like you're like, wow, man, you feel different. You're like proud to be a Marine. You're like, man, this is some crazy stuff. Like I'm doing things that other people don't do. And then you get back to the fleet again, and you're like, back to my normal grind where everyone's grinding as hard as I am and we're all miserable. Like,
Yep.
It's a bad feeling because you're miserable, but it's a good feeling that everyone is grinding, man. Everyone is like literally nonstop. So
Yep.
it's
Everybody's
now
busting
apply
their
that
ass
to
the
your
same
yeah.
way. Yeah. Absolutely. Not to get off topic, but you said you were in South Carolina, right?
Yes, sir.
How I saw that Myrtle Beach was like on fire, dude. Is that true? What's going
Yeah,
on?
Myrtle
with that?
Beach. I live about an hour and a half south of Myrtle Beach, and yeah, there's some crazy wildfires. I play hockey, recreational hockey on a hockey team here, and two of the guys on my team are firefighters. And they had to miss last week's game to go fight the fires.
God damn it. Missing games.
I know, man. You made a commitment to the team. No, yeah, so, and we have a guy on our team who drives from Myrtle Beach to play with us. So he didn't make it, and we had two firefighters. It was crazy, man.
What's it like in where you're living right now? Do you see any of the repercussions because of the fire? Like hazy
No smoke in
clouds,
the
no
air or
smoke?
anything. So I'm originally from Minnesota, and when the Canadian wildfires go every year, like, you can see smoke in the air in Minnesota. Here, Myrtle Beach is really not that far. I don't see any smoke in the air. I will say though, Skylar, you talked about how you had weird weather this week.
Yeah.
I had weird weather this week too. It was like 70 on Monday, 40s Tuesday through Thursday, and now it looks like it's 70 degrees out today. So,
Dude, the weather's been weird this year. I don't know what's going on.
what do you guys want
Yeah.
from me? I'm trying to just enjoy my day. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting
Yeah.
for spring to hit, or at least for it to go above 30 degrees.
We had snow a couple weeks back. One day it snowed. I mean, we don't get much, don't get me wrong. It's not like New York. It snowed, and then the next day was 75. And I'm like,
That's
what?
crazy. That's
Are
bonkers.
you from Texas originally, Skylar? I got to ask you something if you are.
No, I was born in New York,
Okay.
lived in North Carolina forever. Now I'm down in Texas.
Are you one of those guys now that you're living in Texas now that when summer comes around, you're the first person to talk about how hot it is? You're like, man, you can't talk about how hot it is. I live in Texas. I know what hot is.
Now, I will say when I was in Kuwait for doing some private contracting and stuff, absolutely. Absolutely. But this heat in Texas, no.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to bitch about the winter. I
Sure.
hate the winter, dude. And the lowest it gets down here, I think it hit 18, and that's the lowest I've
That's pretty
seen.
cool, man. That's
It's
pretty
pretty
cool.
cool. But for
Yeah.
that to be the coldest you see,
Yeah.
I'll take that. And like I said, now today's supposed to get up to 78. So
That's-
Yeah,
it's good weather.
Like summer vacation for
Hell yeah.
that central New Yorker.
That's
here.
like burning temperatures right there.
Yeah.
That'd melt all the snow off the ground. That's for sure.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Skylar, how hot did it get in Kuwait? Or what was the average temperature?
So during the summer, everything was in Celsius. So
Yep.
I believe that the hottest day in Fahrenheit was about 140
God dang.
that I saw. And
The humidity
there weren't a
too?
lot of
No,
clouds.
right?
Do what?
Was it humid or no? I doubt it.
It could be. Very rarely, though.
Okay.
So I don't know how good you guys are at geography, but Kuwait is right by the ocean, right by a big mass of water, right? And so it rained twice while we were there, but when it rained, dude, it was horrible because everything would flood because they're not used to it.
Yeah.
So literally, it would rain like an inch, and to us, it'd be like, oh, well, that's no big deal. But there, dude, the houses were flooding, the restaurants were flooded. You would think it's the end of the world. It's like being in the South and it snows. Everybody freaks out and loses
It's
their
true.
People are
Yeah,
flipping
man.
their cars on the highway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the heat, man, the heat over there was just different, man. So we were out shooting one day on a tank range. You guys know how tank ranges look. They're pretty wide open. So in the desert, they have these things called camel spiders.
Oh,
And anybody that knows me knows that I don't like spiders at all. What I didn't know is that camel spiders just want some shade. They don't care what kind of shade or anything. So if you're standing somewhere and your shadow's casted, they're just going to chill in your shade.
Ugh.
If
Yeah.
you run, they're going to chase your shade.
oh.
So I ran, and then a fucking camel spider was on my ass chasing.
Imagine not knowing that.
Crazy.
You're just like, leave me the fuck alone.
Dude, I was losing my shit. And somebody was like, just stop. He just wants your shade. So I'm like, fuck you for like 10 minutes. And then I ran out of breath. And I was
That
like,
sounds
you know what?
horrible. That literally
It sounds like a
horrible.
nightmare.
dude, it
Especially if
was
you have, what's it called, arachnophobia, where you're
I
afraid of
have
spiders.
horrible arachnophobia. Dude,
Oh,
that was
God.
a literal nightmare.
Oh
That
my
was
God.
horrible.
That must be the worst.
As soon as I stopped, dude, he just got in my shade and then just chilled. I'm like, you're a piece of shit, spider. I
How long were you in
Spiders are-
Kuwait for?
Do what?
How long were you in Kuwait for?
Just a year. Well,
Just a
oh,
year,
that's
bro.
a
That's a
while.
year of
That's a
camel
fucking long
spiders,
time.
bro. What do you
you
mean?
ain't wrong.
That's a year. Yeah.
It was different. Their military is very different.
Sure, I believe it.
We asked them one time, we're like, so what happens? Because we gave them our old tanks. We sold them the M1A1, but it was a variation, M1A1K2. So I asked him one day, I'm like, so what's going to happen if like there's an invasion or you guys got to go to war? Like, we call America. I'm like, okay, well, there's that. Sounds good. I don't know why we're here teaching you, but as long as
That's
I
how it
keep-
is now, man. Like, I don't know. And I think another part of being a veteran is navigating politics in the world. Like, I don't know, like, regardless of where you guys are in the political spectrum,
Mhm.
chances are that you're friends with a lot of your veteran friends on Facebook, right? And
Yeah.
you're going to see one side of it or you see the other. It doesn't really matter. You can flip a coin and you will see it. Veterans are very political people, but when you're in the service,
They're not.
man, people start, I don't know, people say some weird shit. So
I've got friends on my Facebook that are probably the furthest left you can find, and then I've got friends that are the furthest right you can find. And
yeah,
both
man.
of them, I'm just like, oh, you guys are fucking crazy for being that far.
Being
It's
a
weird that
veteran
you can see.
on Facebook is a weird thing to like see,
Absolutely.
because it's funny how there's like I've known some of the people that I'm obviously like friends on Facebook that are vets, and I've lived with them for years, and I've seen the things they've done. Then a couple months after they get out, they start posting different things, and then either they become super religious out of nowhere,
Oh,
or
yeah.
they become super political, and you're like, wait, who is this person? You have to like double check that it's my
Right.
god, it's this guy I used to drink on the balcony with.
No, and so much of your job in the military is like subject to policy. Like, I mean, I look at the military right now. Like, you have a Secretary of Defense, and they're making these just massive changes. To be
Yep.
in the military, it's probably your commanding officer or your whoever your CO is probably just shouting shit at you. Like, doesn't even know. You're just trying to keep up at this point. But on the outside, now that we're all veterans, we're like, there's two parts of me. I'm trying to think about how it would be if I was still in, or
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, that is crazy. I had it so easy back in the day, or something like that. So it's
Yep.
kind of navigating through a telescope.
And
Mhm.
it's a very weird spectrum because, like Derek was saying, it's like dudes that you were best friends with that you wouldn't think anything about it. You're on a completely different political stance than them.
Mhm.
Like,
Or
not
you
to get
didn't even know that they had a
but me
political
and
stance
Derek have
for
very
mine.
different political views on a lot of things.
Mhm.
But we're still good friends, obviously. I mean, sometimes he pisses me off, but you know. But no, it's crazy that once you get out and you start discussing these things and talking about them, how different people are on what they think and what they believe.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of the problem in America today is we don't have relationships like me and Derek have to where we can think differently on things, but still be friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's have you ever seen the graph of like how well you know someone versus how shitty of a person they are? Like, it's the better you know someone, the less shitty of a person they are. The less you know someone, the more shitty they, because you don't know. Like, if
Right.
I know someone and to everyone else they're a shitty person, but you're like, man, you don't know that they just went through a divorce, or like they have all these
Right.
things going on, like they're just not themselves right now. That's probably the truth. Like, you really never know what someone's going through.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think, I hate like, oh, as a veteran, but like seriously, as a veteran, you see guys going through all sorts of stuff. Like, you don't know what they were like when they were in. They get out and something super formative has happened to them, and
Especially
they
because
might
that's a
have just
weird
gone away.
transition period in your life.
Right.
You're changing the way of life from what you once thought it was to something completely new.
And the
So
way,
your mind definitely has to adapt to some capacity. It can't
and
just
there's,
stay the same from
yeah,
military
man.
to civilian.
Do you ever hear people say? I hear this from veterans too. Like, it's the anti-college veteran that always says like, oh, you don't even know who you are when you're 18. Like, you should take a year off before you go to college. And I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. At the same time, if you don't know who you are when you're 18 and the military swoops you up and like, this is your identity, man, like, you really have not done anything on your own, and then you get out and then either that is your identity or you're trying to rediscover yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that is where so many veterans are like torn. They're like, this is such a strong part of my identity, this is who I belonged with,
Mhm.
but that's not who they feel like they really are. And then there's like
When do
internal
you think this
conflict.
idea of like self begins? Because initially, like you said, it begins pretty much during or after high school, and then going into college, where you have that time to think and really come up with your own ideas and your own thoughts of the world. So, for a veteran, when does that really begin? Because in those 4 years in the military, you're kind of told that you don't have your own ideas or your own thoughts. You have to kind of adjust to a way of life. And then if you get out after 4 years, you're kind of left in this space, this vacuum of, trying to navigate by yourself in the spectrum without really knowing what direction to head to. So does that idea or the ideas of self begin after high school, during the military, or after the military, would you say?
I think a little bit of both, to be honest. So I left right after high school, right? Like my graduation happened 9 days later. I was on a bus. I think that
I was same as you.
yeah, I had like I kind of knew who I was, but my entire adult life was Marine Corps up until I got out.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, for
I
some it
think,
begins during high school, during middle school, even where you have the
yeah,
idea I'm going to be a Marine regardless.
yeah, like I enlisted the month I turned 17, I enlisted. And then obviously I had to do my senior year, but pretty much from 17 to shit, how old was I when I got out? 22,
Yeah,
I
I
think.
think. Yeah.
22 when I got out. That was I'm a Marine. This is what I am. This is who I am. This is encompassing of what I do. After I got out, it was I wouldn't even say after I got out actually. When I hurt my ankle and I was doing my own thing because I had to get surgery, I had to do physical therapy, that is when I started to kind of become who I was going to be, I think.
You were still in at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was still in, but I didn't stand in formation because I couldn't. I didn't do the regular stuff. I didn't run. I didn't work out like I did when I was healthy. So I think that was probably when I started. But I think for most people, it's probably right after you get like TRS. What's it called? TRS?
Yep.
Yeah,
Transition
TRS is
readiness.
probably when you first start to feel that I got to figure out who the fuck I am.
Yeah, that thought especially because now it's kind of starting to hit you a little bit that after this, you're on your own pretty much.
I ran into remember Top Pitsley?
Yep.
He was doing the uh CDL licensing for the Marine Corps,
Mhm.
and I ran into him at TRS, and I was talking to him, and he's like, "Call me Jason," and I'm like, "No, no, you're Top Pitsley, you're not Jason." So,
I would say that I like that. I think you're right. I think this idea itself is like something that veterans have like struggled with. I think it you have to go through like really shitty things in life to figure out who you are. Like in my personal opinion.
Yep.
I really think some people know who they're at when they're 14 and they go through something super formative and they handle it X way, or they're really resilient and they come back from it. I think as someone, I was never deployed in a combat setting. I did more of a diplomatic deployment. I was deployed to Spain at the embassies and the consulates around Spain, and I helped them build security procedures with just being an intel analyst when I was stationed in DC. And I didn't really like. I can imagine if you're 18 years old and you go into combat and you see some really fucked up shit, it's probably you're gonna find out a lot about yourself. You're gonna see it's gonna if you've never left your hometown and then you're 18 and you go see people die in a foreign country, you're probably going to think that's the way that the world really is. Or you're going to probably think a lot of different things.
absolutely.
If someone has a really easy service time, and I'm not saying like super easy, I'm just saying like they were stationed, they didn't go to the field. Like, I'm not going to shit on anyone because I think service is service. But I think there are people who serve in administrative roles. Let's say they were working at IPAC and you're stationed at IPAC for 4 years. All you've done is administrative things. You probably don't really know a lot about yourself because the things that you faced may not be as stressful. Like you've never been put in a situation where you really need to like figure out who you are. And then you go to college and you're like, I think you can exercise a little bit more free will. You might find yourself there, blah, blah, blah. I think it just really depends on what you're going through. And I think I can't imagine being, 18 years old and seeing your best friends that you've been getting tight with blown up. I think that's some crazy shit. And I think those guys, when they come home, to have a normal conversation with their family and to sit down and be like, this is, or they don't say anything, or they don't say, this is what I saw. They just go internal.
Yeah. Because sometimes when you're talking about family, they don't understand either.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, is trying to find somebody else that understands what you're going through.
And how can you make sense of it when you're 18 and you've never seen the world? When you have to have a baseline, you have to establish a baseline, like this is normal and this isn't normal. If you're 18, you don't know what's normal, what's not normal. If that's the first country you've ever been to and you've never, like, how many people did you know that were extremely privileged growing up and they got to go see Europe? They backpacked through Europe and you're like, man, that's really cool. Those kids probably didn't join the Marine Corps. And so now you have these Marines that are really stuck in their ways because they dealt with something so strong, so formative at that same age when people were backpacking, that's some crazy shit. So it depends on what you go through, in my opinion.
No, I agree 100%. And there's a saying that it talks about like more of what you're capable of in a job force, but I think it can apply to life. And it's like, how's it go? It's something along the lines of when pressure's put on you, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your training. And I think that's a lot of what life is yeah, you might have these moments where you rise up and you handle everything the exact way, but at the end of the day, you're going to sink to who you are as a person. And those moments are going to be when you find out who you really are.
Amen. I will second that.
That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
And like, I don't know. People probably when you interact with people who have never served, and I will even extend this to people who work at the post office. When you work for something that is bigger than yourself and that does affect, the community, like you work with people. Like I think this is my personal philosophy. I think everyone should have to do a year in some sort of like community building service, whether it's the post office, whether they serve. There's a billion Peace Corps. It could be anything. I think people should have the identity that there is something bigger and that they should contribute. Anyway,
Absolutely.
there are people who don't do that. And they go through life thinking that there is this thing of society that's tailored to them. And then they talk to a veteran, and then they ask you like, well, how do you do that? And I'm like, dude, the Marine Corps literally trains you like, just remember your training. And if you're not going to remember your training, like do what you think is the right thing to do in that setting. Like if chances are, if it looks like shit and it smells like shit, it's probably shit. So like,
absolutely.
And like you said, you're gonna, at the end of the day, if you don't rise to the occasion, if you don't follow that training, you're gonna sink to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I really firmly agree with that. I think that is a really well said thing.
I can't speak on behalf of like other MOSs, but in tanks for sure, there is no way that we could forget our training. The amount of times we did things, the amount of times we prepared for inspections over and over again, I feel like it just became like what's it called, muscle memory at that point.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You start up something, you hate it, and you're like, oh my God, I have to do this again. But then it becomes again and again and again and again. And then after so many agains, it becomes like part of who you are and what you do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at go ahead, Skyler.
In Kuwait, I was telling you how they had the M1A1s. So it was, 3 years after we got out that I decided that I went over there. So after 3 years, dude, as soon as I peeked in the driver's hole, I was like, okay, I remember everything. And it was, like you said, muscle memory. So yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that.
I look at it like athletes, like these athletes, like chances are if you make it to a professional level, that's all you have done for your entire life. And whether they're practicing every day or whether they're having games, all this stuff, a hockey player, their stick is their extension of their body. A quarterback in football, they have thrown the football 100 times probably at least a day. In the Marine Corps, like you're literally practice, whether it's preventative maintenance on a vehicle or it's making a targeting package to bring up, to your higher ups. It is literally rehearsal every single day. Every day is some sort of pomp and circumstance. It's the way you get dressed. It is a rehearsal. And I think, I don't know, when you guys wear a suit now, or if you guys do anything where you dress up, I kind of do it by the numbers. I usually start with my socks. I know people who put their pants on before their socks. I literally get dressed the same way every day, regardless of suit, whether it's field clothes or nothing. And it's because I've been doing it literally since I've been 18. And I've been doing it by the numbers. And it's just been the easiest way. It's the way I know how. My girlfriend laughs at me when I'm wearing socks first. And, I got my underwear on and socks. I look like a nerd. I don't care, though. But, but I've been doing it since I was 18, man. I have nothing else to say.
Yep. Absolutely. So we're running a little low on time. So I want to ask you this before we run out. What is the biggest piece of advice that you can give somebody that's transitioning?
If you're coming to me for advice, man, you're in trouble. No, I'm kidding. I think that it depends on the veteran that I'm talking to. I will tailor my advice to them. But if I could give a blanket sheet of advice, it is listen, people, you're not the first person to be going through this. Whether it's transitioning, well, it could be anything. It could literally be finding a job. So people who or you're seeking advice from, listen to what they have to say. You don't have to take it, but you can listen. Chances are it's not going to all be for you, but there will be something that is in there that is really going to resonate with you. I remember when I was like, I knew I wanted to go to college. I didn't know what college I wanted to. And I was just sending stuff. And the officer that I really, really looked up to sat me down and he goes like, hey man, I know some people here, here, and here. We know, and the one college I really wanted to go to, I didn't get into. And he goes, let's go over this together. Let's go over your goals, and then we can come up with a plan. And I was like, man, this guy, like, it's kind of a hassle. I don't want to come up with my goals, but I really listened to what he had to say, and it really helped me shape my next step. I didn't have a long step to take, but it shaped the very next one. And then at that next step, I had more people I could listen to when I got to college, and they started telling me all these things. And then when I got my professional job, I was listening to my peers saying, like, this is the best way to succeed. So listen. There is always someone who knows something that you don't. Listen.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely. Honestly, couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, that's great.
I feel like a lot of people, like you said, they feel like they're the only ones that have been through this or that have gone through it. And if they take a second and they just talk to somebody or they ask the questions, which is the hardest part, in my opinion, is asking the question.
Yeah.
And then listen. Absolutely. Listen to what people have to say. Listen to the advice that's given. And it'd probably make your life a whole lot easier. If I would listen to advice that people would give me,
I'm still learning how to figure out how to do it myself, but I am listening. I'm a better listener now than I was when I was younger, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Great advice.
Now, sorry, just to add on to that, what do you think is the hardest part about, we could listen, right? But what do you think would be the hardest part about acting upon what you're listening to? How do you know what advice is the best and which to take, if that makes sense?
I think it's that if it looks like shit and it smells like shit, it's probably shit. Like, I'm not saying every single piece of advice that you're going to get is like be careful with who gives you advice, but be patient with those that you take it from.
That's good. Yeah. I like
That's
that.
what I'm going to say. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Because as a veteran too, sometimes I feel like you might get too much advice,
right?
Especially coming from people that think they know what the right answer is. And as a veteran, especially as a new veteran, you're kind of overwhelmed with information at some point. Right. There's a lot of outlets. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of information out there, but you kind of just don't know how to navigate that and which step to take next. So I think that's good advice too. Patience is a big one, I think, that a lot of veterans should exercise.
Absolutely.
Sure. And use your, because I know vets that you go to them and you're like, man, this is a situation. They're like, burn the house down. And like, obviously don't take that.
That's a very Marine Corps type way of thinking.
We're like, burn the house down. Everything will be fine. Just do that. But use your head, listen, and ask the question. I think that's 3 pieces of advice that probably get people through a lot more stuff.
Amen. You can't win hearts and minds with bullets through them. Don't burn the house down.
Agreed. Oh, hell. Well, dude, we really enjoyed having you on here.
It's been an honor. I've really had a fun time talking with you guys.
Thanks for coming on, Harris. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate what you guys are doing. This is great, giving voices to veterans. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing your next guests give me some advice that hopefully I'm willing to listen to.
Absolutely.
That's the goal. Yeah, we do our best.
Well, as always, we are the Voices of Valhalla. Thank you guys for listening, and all links will be posted down below. So give us a follow, give us a subscribe, fill out the forms, and get on the episode.
Send in questions if you have any. Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yep. Ask the questions and listen, like Harris said. All right, everybody, have a good one.